Doesn't it sound like heaven to love your teen so well that they can't help themselves but love you back? Welcome to Pivot Parenting. I'm your host, Heather Frazier. And together, you and I are going to build more peace and joy so that your family looks forward to being together in the fun times and so that you are strong enough to overcome any obstacle that your family might face. This is where small weekly shifts that you implement create lasting change so that peace and happiness can truly abound in your home. Welcome to Pivot Parenting, my friend. I am so excited to tell you about this episode and the following 11 episodes. So a dozen total are all going to have the same theme. And it is my most favoritist thing of all times. It is why I chose to be a mom, why I chose to decide to evolve as a mom, and why I help parents evolve as well. This I try to have as the driving force in my life for everything because it makes me happy and it makes me a better person. Welcome to my series on love. I want you to think about your teen. Do you commonly experience worry, frustration, a need for them to change or for you to have more control over what's happening? Do you feel yourself bouncing between anger and apathy, just trying to find somewhere soft to land? Do you care so much about them that you find yourself being tied into a pretzel just to please them? And then, if it works at all, it's very short-lived. If this is at all relatable, you could be misunderstanding and or misapplying love in your family. I am so excited to share this series with you. Let's put your fear, frustration, and heartbreak all in the past. I am going to teach you how to embrace love so well that your relationship with your children, with the people in your life, and with you, yourself, cannot help but improve. This is the first episode, and it is very important to listen to at least the first 3 episodes in order so that you can best apply the following episodes, because the 3 first episodes are going to be foundational in mastering or at least practicing in order to apply any of the other ones that I've got. Today is the very most important first step, which is that of creating safety. And I know what you're saying. Obviously, my home is safe. I don't leave guns out, no landmines in the yard. That's good. That's important. And locking your doors is not what I mean. I'm talking about emotional safety. And parents are really good at thinking that they do this, and then I talk to their kids, and the parents are leaving things wanting. And that's what we're going to talk about today with so much grace and compassion and love. This is a really important piece to remember as we go through today's episode, because all of us make mistakes. We all get it wrong. The point is not to beat ourselves up. In order to create safety, we have to recognize how we are not creating safety first. And I want to break up today's show into 2 parts. The first one is how we can help create safety for our kids, showing them how it's done and allowing them to fail and learn and advocate for that for themselves. And then when we need to step in and create safety when they are unable to do so. They are children. And so sometimes we have to intervene for their safety. And those instances are few and far between, but they're important to recognize. Now, to get started, I want to define emotional safety so that we're all on the same page. And I actually liked Google's definition. It said, emotional safety means your teenager knows they can bring you their whole self. They see your insecurities, your shortcomings, all the things. The messy parts, the mistakes, the doubts, the failures, the questions, without fear of judgment, punishment, or shame. It is the difference between a teen who hides their struggles from you and one who comes to you first. That's a huge indicator if you're providing safety for your teen. Do they come to you or do they hide it from you? Emotional safety is created when you listen without immediately fixing or problem solving, separate their behavior from their worth. That can sound like that choice wasn't great versus you're irresponsible. Manage our own emotions first, because our calm creates their safety. And that is one of the 3 main episodes, one of the foundational episodes. I will go into that in more detail. Validating feelings, even when you don't agree with actions. Keep confidences. Admit when we're wrong. Stay curious instead of reactive. Basically, what this looks like in practice is if your teen fails a test, gets rejected, makes a terrible choice, questions their faith, struggles with their identity, and the first thought is to tell you because they trust you'll help them navigate it rather than make them feel worse, you're winning. Good job. You are generally creating emotional safety. The payoff, and another way to say this, is that they don't hide, they share, they ask for help. Of course, every child is slightly different. Some are really private naturally, and some blab about everything. But you know your kid, and you know when it's their normal personality or when they are pulling back. And that's the important piece that we want to pay attention to. All right, my friends. Now that you understand what I mean when I say emotional safety, I want to begin our journey of safety going back several decades, if you'll join me, to when I was a little girl. Because guess what? This is when we're all forming our nervous systems. Our brains are deciding what feels safe and who doesn't. And our nervous system is one of the first things that forms in utero. And it continues to form with our brain development. And we are constantly learning as humans what is safe, who is safe, what is not. And this is a really important part of survival. And we don't ever want to get rid of it. We want to understand it and intelligently use it. When I was a little girl, I had a dad who liked to swear. And I love my dad. And he would mix swear words with made up cusses. So like, son of a bishop. I actually thought that was a swear when I was little. And I would get really scared when he would say son of a bishop because not the words, but the tone. And it would be while he was trying to pack the car for family vacation, or if something wasn't where he left it, or if he was frustrated with whatever was going on. He had a hard time emotionally regulating. And I love my dad, and he got a lot of things wrong, and he got a lot of things right. And this is where compassion and understanding comes in. And my mom is actually a saint because she had 6 kids, and I've never heard the woman yell. She would try to temper his moods. She would shield us from the worst of it and keep the family boat from capsizing. She was the steady but also enabling force in our home because she was so calm and cool and level-headed. She could steady my dad. And I can see how in some instances that was the best case scenario. And in some, it wasn't, because I learned from my parents that I needed to be good, obedient, and make myself small and compliant to feel safe. And also, I learned that it was my job to try and mitigate the uncontrolled bad behavior of others, specifically men. I learned that I wasn't always safe in my family relationships, that I might just be making too much noise, as kids do. And my dad would tell me and my siblings or friends to go play on the highway, which was actually adjacent to our house. Hey kids, go play on the freeway. You're making too much noise. It was always in jest. But I also always knew that we were agitating him. And my mom would gather us up, and she was just such a sweet thing, and it made it all better. And yeah, my dad was still doing better than how he was raised. And that's not to justify or excuse bad behavior. But let's pause the story right here for a minute. Let's fast forward to me as an adult in my marriage and with my own children, and how impactful my parents were in shaping who I am and my nervous system and what feels safe and what doesn't. And this is what I see play out for parents and children, is that their insecurities and their vulnerabilities and their wounds from when they were little, if unhealed, can play out into their present relationships. And it was years and years, maybe even decades, in my own marriage with a husband who could emotionally regulate himself, that I could heal that part of me to not act like my mom, to mitigate behaviors and situations to help him feel better. He didn't need my help, but that's what I thought I was supposed to do as a good wife and mom. And this enables bad behavior from that parent, and it can go either way. I've seen it where the dad is the one trying to buffer the blow to the kids from the mom's anger and frustration. So this is not a gendered thing. But when we have one parent who has not done the work to emotionally grow up and mature and manage their own feelings, and the other one overcompensates, this is an unhealthy dynamic. And it does not help children to create safety. Either they will potentially either feel like the parent who can't control themselves or the parent who has to control everyone around them. The third option that I have seen that is amazing and also hurts my heart is when the child has to play the emotional adult in the relationship because the parents won't step up. And so they have to create safety for themselves by setting boundaries, saying no, allowing their parents to deal with disappointment without trying to satisfy them by overcompensating. And then, of course, you have the scenario where there's one parent or both parents have the same pattern of dysregulation. And I'm sure there are lots of other options that could roll with as well. These are just the common ones I see. Now, how can we create safety for our children and model it for him? There are two main patterns that I see in my family of origin, in the family I have created, and with all of my clients. The first one that is really common is that parents don't own how they get it wrong. I assure you, your kids, your spouse, they know what you get wrong. Listen to them when they give you feedback. It might not feel good and they might not deliver it well. But if they tell you where you're getting it wrong, take that piece of humble pie, accept it graciously, and clean the plate, my friend. One way that I see parents deflect this is they say, "I'm sorry you feel that way." That's deflecting accountability. That's actually not an apology. It's not acknowledging their experience or the validity of their feelings. It's kind of like giving your kid a middle finger. Patterns where we refuse to see how we're contributing to hurt create the opposite of safety. We want to be humble. We want to own what is ours. We do not want to tell our child that's your problem to figure out, not mine. And by the way, I'd also like you to figure out my problems that I am blaming you for, like my impatience, my fear, my anxiety. And here's how you fix it. You tell me everything. You never lie to me. You clean your room and do your chores exactly as I say. You're a straight A student. I like all your friends. No, we cannot expect our child to overcompensate for our fears and anxiety. That is where we're getting it wrong. And we need to own where we're getting it wrong. The second really common thing that I see parents do is we judge our kids by our standards and not by where they are at. What I mean by this, let's say you have a neurodivergent child, but you wish that they would act like a neuronormal kid. Or you have a depressed kid and you just want them to get up and get their butt to school because that is how you think they should be. And you could do it, and you did it even when you were sad. This is just teaching your kid that love is conditional and they aren't earning it, which means they aren't safe. This can come across as passive-aggressive remarks, how they're using their phone, their appearance. All of these different types of judgments towards our kids and towards their friends are a big deal. I remember when one of my kids was much younger, early adolescence, really early adolescence, and self-harm was something that I hadn't really been familiar with. I knew about suicide, but not about cutting and other things that people would do to harm themselves. And my child was telling me about when One Direction broke up, everybody was cutting themselves because they were so sad about Zayn leaving the group. I don't even know who Zayn is, but this was the story. And I just remember saying, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And I was really judgmental. She took that to heart. And then she concealed from me her own desires of self-harm. That's a micro example of how our judgments come across. Or if you are in a really small box of beliefs as far as political beliefs, sexual ideation and beliefs, religious philosophy, and you judge critically people who do not agree with you, guess what? If your kid is bi, or if they're not sure about their gender, or if they think the other political party has it better than your political party, they're not going to tell you. They're not going to be honest with you about it. And that could lead to a lot of struggle. And so we need to make sure that even if we're commenting on their friends, a lot of kids too will say what they're doing, but as a friend to see how their parent responds. So they'll say, oh, Jessica sneaked out the other night and met up with her boyfriend. And if you're like, oh, Jessica's only 14, we should tell her parents that's not okay. What was she thinking? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Or Jessica's talking to somebody online and you go off about how stupid that is. Well, guess what? Your kid is named Jessica and they're doing it and they wanted to see your response and you just failed. Do you see how this plays out? So we have to really be careful in owning when we get it wrong. That means apologizing. I'm sorry is a complete sentence, not that you feel that way. And then number 2, our judgments towards our kids and towards others, because they are taking it all in as far as what mom and dad think is okay. And I need to be okay because I rely on them for literally everything. And if they don't think I'm okay, that threatens my sense of self and my way of life. Imagine your teen walking into the room and your heart skips a beat because you're so excited to see them. Just connection, love, and peace flowing between you. You're confident that no matter their mood, it's going to be okay. This is the powerful skill set my clients gain. Book a free Discover Your Disconnection Pattern call with me, and I will outline your exact process to find the peace, connection, and confidence in your teen and their future you're wanting. Visit my website, heatherfraser.com, or click the link in the show notes. Remember, Fraser is spelled with a Z-I in the middle. I look forward to meeting and helping you. At the beginning of the episode, I mentioned situations where parents are less emotionally evolved, and so their child has to step up and be the adult in the relationship emotionally. If you see your child setting boundaries with you, if they do not play along to make you feel better, it could be because they are trying to create safety for themselves. And this is really valuable information, especially if when you're honest with yourself, you can see how you have perhaps been putting your emotional state onto their shoulders to fix. And how I can see when parents are doing this is when I try to point out how they could improve or the flaws in their thinking, they will turn it right back to their kid and say, yeah, but if they would just get up and go to school, this wouldn't be a problem. Or I don't know why he consistently lies to me. They're not taking into account how they are behaving toward their child that could invite their child's behavior. And I'm not saying that your kid's behavior is all your fault. Totally isn't. Just like your behavior isn't their fault. But as the adult in the relationship, the one with the fully formed brain, it is your job to set your feelings aside, to look at things objectively and decide if maybe your child is done trying to manage your emotions and is handing them back to you. And we can also do this with our children. I remember talking to one of my kids as I was learning coaching tools, and I had tied myself into a pretzel trying to please this child. I would buy them their favorite things at the grocery store. I would always say yes. And it seemed like nothing I could do helped them to feel consistently loved or seen or valued. And as I was learning coaching philosophies, which are basically just psychology, I realized that I was trying to fix their emotions for them. And so one day when this child was venting about how they felt like they didn't belong, I said, I'm sorry. I know that can feel really lonely. And I feel like you belong. And here's why. When I go to the grocery store, I think about you. When I do your laundry, I'm trying to serve you. When I make dinner, I make sure there's things that you like. When I say my prayers, I think of you and pray for you by name. And so you are very involved in my life. And perhaps if you want to feel more included, you could think of others aside from yourself in the family and come and sit with us, be engaged, ask us how our day was. And their jaw just kind of dropped and they had no response because I was giving them back accountability for including themselves. This is a really important piece to model for our children of how to create safety for ourselves. This is how we're circling back to my family of origin. If one parent consistently cannot emotionally regulate themselves, you stop putting up with it. I'm talking about situations where you're comfortable that it won't escalate to something greater and you feel like you can create safety in a different way. Had my mother not put up with my father's son of a bishop cussing, that could have taught me how to create safety for myself in a more healthy, constructive way than trying to keep everyone happy around me and never let them have a temper. When parents excuse the out-of-control parent and justify their behavior, or if they try to compensate it by saying, well, he's a really good dad and look at all the good things he's done for us, that doesn't mitigate or change the bad behavior. I heard an analogy once that I really liked. It's poop in the brownies. The brownies have sugar and chocolate. They're good, but also there's poop in them. Do you want to eat them? Well, no, you don't. The negative negates any sugar or sweetness because there's not a sense of safety. Owning our behavior and then modeling that it's okay to fail, how to calibrate our nervous system. This is how we teach our children to create safety. I love teaching my clients specific tools to regulate their emotions, and then they go and teach their kids, and it's amazing. A really simple one that I've talked about here is processing emotion. There's also box breath, tapping, going for a walk, dance parties. There are so many different ways to get your body to feel safe again and to be able to model this for our kids and to emotionally invite our partners and own ourselves, our emotional development, instead of pushing off onto our kids, is how we create safety for them. And I have to forewarn you of something. When parents first start to own their stuff, it's like the floodgates will open and the kids will dump everything on you that you've gotten wrong. It's really easy to become super defensive, to try to justify, to try to explain, to try to downplay or minimize. And it's important that you don't, because that pulls the safety back. So everything that they're getting that's true, even if you disagree with how they interpreted the situation, their perspective and emotional experience is 100% valid. There's just a couple of lines that you want to use. I'm so sorry. Your feelings are valid. I didn't realize that's how you remembered that situation, and that completely makes sense. Those are examples of how we can listen and validate. Tell me more. Were there other experiences where you felt this way? How can I make it up to you? What can I do to make this better for you? And they might say, I want therapy, or you need to go to therapy. Those are all things to consider. Over the next few months, I am going to be teaching a lot of things on how to love your child better, so that when they move out, they will want to come home. And I cannot emphasize enough how much emotional, physical safety plays into that. I invite you to implement what I have taught. This is just the beginning. Don't worry if it feels confusing. I'm just trying to break this down into 30, 40-minute sound bites so it's not overwhelming. Baby steps are a good way to move forward, and these are big baby steps. Try implementing safety in what feels good and nurturing to you that you've learned today, and I'll talk to you next week with the next foundational step, which is loving yourself. And I'm really excited for you to learn about the next one. I think it's going to blow your mind how much your self-love is playing into your ability to love your family. I'll see you next week.